So today I'm going to talk about muscle contraction and how it works, and just trying to teach you guys about it, I guess. So muscles contract by following these 3 steps, and the steps are known as the neuromuscular junction, excitation, contraction, coupling, and the cross-bridge cycling. So, you know how like sometimes you wake up in the middle of the night and you're stretching, and then all of a sudden you get a calf cramp or whatever, and then you start screaming in your sleep? Yeah, well, that's your muscle contracting. So the other night I actually woke up twice because I had a calf cramp and my foot started cramping, and that was awful. And yeah. And so in my anatomy and physiology class, we just finished our last unit, and it was over muscles, but more like specifically how they contract. And we spent around 3 weeks learning how they contracted. And so today I'm just going to tell you guys about how they contract following the neuromuscular junction, excitation, contraction, coupling, and the cross-bridge cycling. So now that we've discussed what the speech is about, I'll move on to how it starts contracting. So the first step to muscle contraction is the neuromuscular junction, and this is also where it occurs at. And so the nerve impulse from a motor neuron is sent to the muscle fiber at the neuromuscular junction, and upon arrival of the nerve impulse at the axon terminal, it triggers the opening of these calcium channels. And then after the calcium channels open, the calcium diffuses into the neuron, and it triggers the release of these ACH-filled vesicles that fuse with this neuron membrane. And then ACH diffuses across this synaptic cleft that's in between the 2 neurons, and it binds the ACH receptors in the motor end plate, which is in the muscle that the neurons are connected to. And then once these are activated, the gates will open and they allow sodium to enter the muscle fiber and then cause what is known as depolarization. Okay, and then so now for the excitation contraction coupling that continues the contraction process. As a result of the depolarization in the last step, an action potential is now generated along the sarcolemma from the voltage-gated sodium channels, and there are these T-tubules and a sarcoplasmic reticulum that are on the neurons, and they're responsible for making sure each myofibril is responding in unison to the action potential that was set from the neuromuscular junction. And the T-tubules and sarcoplasmic reticulum on either side are defined as a triad. This allows the action potential to be propagated instantly through the muscle fiber. Okay, and then for the final step, which is known as cross-bridge cycling, the final step of muscle contraction is known as cross-bridge cycling. And so this is when the release of calcium from the sarcoplasmic reticulum initiates the events leading to the contraction of the sarcomeres, which the sarcomeres are just the muscle fibers and all that stuff. And so in there they have these Z discs, and they form a boundary of the sarcomere, while there's an M line that separates and is the center. And then there's thin filaments composed of actin, troponin, and tropomyosin, and they extend from this Z disc. And then the thick filaments composed of myosin radiate from the central M line. And then there's these myosin heads, and they become energized from ATP, and it binds, which prepares it for the contraction. And then calcium will release from the sarcoplasmic reticulum, and it will bind to the troponin, and it releases these myosin binding sites on the actin. And then once the cross-bridge formation occurs, as the energized myosin sites bind to new myosin binding sites on the actin, the myosin heads will pivot, and then they bind to another ATP molecule, causing dissociation from the actin, resulting in the cross-bridge detachment. And then the heads will return back to an energized state from ATP, and then multiple cross-bridge interactions will keep occurring, which causes the contraction to keep continuing and keeps pulling the sarcomeres together until they're fully contracted. And yeah, so just to recap today, we talked about the steps of muscle contraction, which are known as the neuromuscular junction, excitation, contraction, coupling, and cross-bridge cycling. And I hope that when you guys are sitting in bed and you randomly get a cramp, that you remember why. Yeah. Have fun with all the cramps life throws at you.